I'm pretty sure, but I will take it. Thank you so much. I'm glad to be back with you. Today we're going to talk a lot about, expand a lot about on last week's subject of perfectionism. I'm going to read a little bit more into it, share a little bit more of the things, the lessons that were brought to me this past week, and some new ideas that a wonderful friend and coach opened my mind to that has really resonated and helped me this week. And then I'm going to teach you and take you through your first meditation with me. And it's called the medical habituation or the addiction meditation in Kundalini Yoga. And it's 3 minutes. It's super, super fast, and it works extremely well with habituation pathways, habituation ideas and programming in your brain, i.e. addictive behavior or addictive thinking. And the thing with addictive thinking is we don't even know that we're doing it. It just is. So this is a really great physical tool to help you break into that mind cycle. A lot of times we're offered a lot of knowledge, a lot of study, a lot of kind of cliche consciousness discussion around, oh, just open your mind, oh, just relax, oh, blah, 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 and not a lot of how. I need some tangible how. How do I stop biting my nails? How do I stop hitting the pipe? How do I stop thinking about this relationship that I receive so much pain from? So this meditation, it's our how, and it's a beautiful, short, effective how. And then at the end, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about, or a lot more about, some really exciting new programming that I'm offering. Very excited to share that with you, my baby. So let's begin. Let's begin with the perfectionism. I'd like to read a wonderful quote from Brené Brown from her book Daring Greatly. She talks a lot about, she writes a lot about perfectionism in that book, and it was really the first I had read about perfectionism. And she did an amazing job, as she often does, of blowing my mind. She says, perfectionism is not the same thing as striving for excellence. Perfectionism is not about healthy achievement and growth. Perfectionism is a defensive move. It is a 20-ton shield that we lug around, thinking it will protect us, when in fact it's the thing that really prevents us from being seen. Thank you, Brené. So I'm going to let you sit with that for a second. When I first came to this statement and this idea that perfectionism isn't good, inherently good, it was mind-blowing to me. Perfectionism seemed at once unattainable and suffocating to me. Unattainable in that I looked around at a lot of the type A folks that I was surrounded by and kind of envied them, their planners and their schedules and their busyness, and they're talking about their busyness, and it just seemed that they were really on top of their shit. And I equated that with perfectionism. And as somebody who chronically felt like I was always behind on my shit, and not even doing that right, I wanted to be like them. And suffocated by perfectionism, I'll expound into that. Even as I was envying these people, their busyness and their importance, their seeming importance inside of their busyness, I was suffocating myself with my own unmet expectations and with my own increasingly high standards and increasingly rigid ideas of what is successful, what success looks like in my life. So those two things ran hand in hand. And it wasn't until I read this that I realized that somebody told me for the first time that perfectionism isn't a good thing. It's not. It's not largely. It's not a good thing. It's not a badge to be worn, even though that's what happens in this success and goal-oriented and obsessed culture that we live in. Perfectionism was a distraction. Perfectionism was a prison. And I was focusing on the thing looking like I expected it to, or like I thought it should, instead of actually doing the thing or being inside of the thing. So last week I talked a little bit about putting out that first video, ball cap on, in my yoga clothes, natural lighting, not really what a month to 6 weeks ago that I had set out and planned for this venture to look like aesthetically. And that kept me silent and chewing my nails and, getting restless sleep at night, worrying about getting this project started, all because of an unmet expectation that, there's a cat crawling up over the fence. All that, and unmet expectation that I had set up for myself, and it kept me paralyzed. So first, if you find yourself in that this patterning is similar to something in your life, allow yourself to recognize that perfectionism is not a badge to be worn. It's not necessarily a good thing. It's not something to be cultivated. It's actually working against you in many, many, many ways. Perfectionism, and for me specifically, it was that 20-ton shield. It was, I wasn't showing up as my authentic self as I was flitting around trying to be perfect. And by default, I wasn't giving just as much credence and visibility to my quote-unquote my faults as I was to the things that I felt that I got right? So people only got half of me, and therefore I was only able to experience half of myself in relationship with them, because we hold up a mirror to those with whom we are in relationship, and they reflect back us. And if I'm only showing them half of my stuff, then I'm only getting that back. And so you see where the spiral goes. It goes into this place of scarcity and poverty and disconnection with our minds and our physical bodies. But I digress. So if you find that these patterns look like some things in your life, A, call it out. Call perfectionism for what it is. And then B, own your shadows. So from last Thursday to today, today's Thursday here when I am recording this, for the past week, I have been pouring out projects and ideas and programming. And as I'm doing it's pouring out of me because I'm realizing how much perfectionism has held me back. So I am also experiencing, as these things are leaving the safe space of my mind and my heart, and I'm bringing them out into the world to be seen and to be loved and to be judged and to be steamrolled and all of that scary stuff, my perfectionism, it came up, it bubbled up, it got really, really freakishly big. It was like the Hulk. It just came up and it started to take over. And I specifically, this was a couple of days ago when I launched the biggest program that I've ever really done, which I'll tell you more about later on. And I launched it on the new moon. It was Tuesday. It's time for new beginnings. And I immediately felt gross and sick, and I was at one time I knew at once, I knew that this is exactly what I needed to do and when I needed to do it, but I also felt extremely vulnerable and gross inside of that vulnerability, because this is a completely new experience for me. And I was learning how to navigate it in a really sensitive time of the month of the moon cycle. So I named it. I saw the perfectionism and the hyper controlling and trying to hold on to it, and then the resistance against not being able to be in complete control anymore. And so I was working with my friend, my coach, Jess, and I told her all of these things, and she said, in so many words, she called me out on my hating on my perfectionism. She's like, Dawn, your perfectionism came to you today for a reason. Even your perfectionism is useful. It came up because somehow it has